Hello everyone. Hope you can hear me clearly. Welcome to the session for the Dog and Cat Coalition. We are delighted to have you join us today. First, let me introduce our speaker. Today we have Anjani from Himalayan Animal Rescuers. Anjani always told me that she has so many stories, and all of her story I personally found them very helpful and informative. And it's very rare that we can hear more from her today. And we also joined by Gregg and Lily Anna from Kathmandu Animal Treatment Center of Nepal. Gregg has always been a great support to AfA, and he has been instrumental in fostering cooperation between organizations and supporting local initiatives. And for those who attended the AfA conference in Malaysia last year, you may already familiar with Lily Anna, remarkable and emotional speak there. She shared her inspiring program and aim at encourage prisoners to join hands and care for the animals. So for the first topic, we will talk about the importance of encouraging grassroots NGO, local NGO enjoy in the movement. So we can start now. And Anjani, Gregg, and Liliana, can you hear us? And please unmute yourselves so we can start the session.
Hi, Lynn.
Hi.
Hello. Okay, so let's start with our first topic. And can you share with us like some example story of empowering local organization in leading and improve the community animals welfare? Maybe we start with Anjani.
Thank you, Lynn. Right. So today we are talking about the grassroots organization, and HEART itself is quite a small organization in itself. We are a grassroots organization ourselves. So I think we have the perspective of working on it and working for it in both the ways. One of the first things that we have to understand as working for animals is that in countries like Nepal, animal welfare or animal issues are not a common conversation topic. It is not something that we speak about a lot. Hence, there are a lot of things that need changing. And I think even in our last conversations, we have realized that even within Asia, there is so much difference in the different backgrounds, the cultural backgrounds, and how it affects the working of not just, of all organization, a big organization or grassroots organization. So the first thing that I think I could speak, because we are primarily based in Pokhara, and we've been working here since 2010. The first thing that we have to understand is identifying the groups, right? So there are different people working here. So some of them are individuals who are working on their personal level. So we have quite a many feeders here in Pokhara who have, taken on to the responsibility of feeding the dogs around them, the cats around them. And then there are certain groups, a couple of people, young people in particular, who feed the dogs or even help with the rescues, who bring the dogs to us, because we primarily work with dog and cats. So we see a lot of them. And there are groups that, they bring the dogs to us. So there's a personal people working at an individual level, and then there are small groups of people, and then there are organizations like us. So in Pokhara, for now, we are the only organization working. So these are the three different groups, or different types or kinds of the people that we work with. And when we speak about grassroots, I think it's a very generic term, but understanding how the interrelationship between all of this this work, because an organization, as an organization ourselves, we cannot do everything. There are certain limitations that we have. People feeding have certain limitation, and I think, even within that particular group, it is all about how we can help each other and overcome those limitations. So I think that is the first thing that we have to understand as grassroots organization.
And Gregg and Liliana, do you have any stories to share with us?
Yeah, one story that we're both involved in is the city of Kathmandu is doing a large-scale dog sterilization program. And instead of working with a big global animal organization, they decided to collaborate with 9 local organizations and vet clinics. And so they divided up the city into, the different wards are being covered by different organizations. And to me, I think this is a fantastic example of small organizations working with each other and also working with governments to make a difference. So it's, the funding is provided by the municipality, and they set a schedule and they assign different parts of the city to different organizations, and then we each do the work. And so I think, yeah, I feel like this is a great example of just empowering these local organizations. Of course, funding is a struggle for almost everyone working here. And so by the municipality providing the funding, that's sort of the key piece, and the coordination as well. And yeah, and actually, Lily, do you want to talk about the more data side of it?
Yeah, can everyone hear me well?
Yeah.
Yes? Okay. Yes. So instead of just doing the ABC program and running around catching dogs and not knowing exactly, or not having a program to do that, with the KMC, we have established that we are going to use a systematic way. We're going to use an application that the 9 different organizations are going to be trained on, and CAT is going to do that for them, and for the KMC too, so they are able to manage all the data that's going to be going to them. But the interesting part is that out of all the 9 organizations, only CAT has used an app to collect the data on the dog surveys and the dog sterilizations and etc. And other organizations, but the other ones have not. So we do not really know the impact that, each ABC program that the KMC and in Kathmandu has done, the impact that it's had. So if we want to measure that, if we want to understand that, and we want to really do something that is going to last for long, it's going to be sustainable, we need to understand what we're doing. And maybe one-on-one we cannot do that, but now we have the opportunity to do it at a big scale, based on grassroots organizations like ours. Now we can do it at a big scale, and if we maintain it and we are able to do it throughout the time, we're going to see the changes throughout all the what is it called? All the actions that we put in place to reduce the dog population on the streets, the roaming dogs, etc. So I think it's a very good opportunity to bring all these organizations, small organizations, together and share a common goal and share the same apps and the same tools to make it happen.
I completely agree with Liliana. I think keeping a track of the progress is very important in order to have a measure of how well it has been or how effective the program has been. And I think this is a conversation we have had many times, even in the past, in regards to the dog population management, about having a proper measure of it, and whether how much is enough. whether we do 100%, is it possible, whether we do 80%, and absolutely keeping records is important. I would like to add a little to that. So while we talk about the collaborations with the municipalities, so we have also had the wonderful opportunity of working with several municipalities in Nepal. So now that the winter has subsided, our team is now working with municipalities, and there is a reason why the municipalities are reaching out to the grassroots organizations, so organizations that provide the neutering facilities. Is I think many might know that now the culling in Nepal is not legal. You cannot do it. But the issue of the street dog and the population management of the dogs remains a big problem. So what do the municipalities do then? The only option left is sterilization. But unfortunately, here in Nepal, a lot of times the veterinary itself is in a very embryonic stage. The treatment facilities are there's a lot we could do in that regard. And surgery is complicated. It's not easy. Not everybody provides the surgical facilities. Not, unfortunately, everybody has that. And particularly with street dogs, it gets even trickier. Because while working in different areas, when we are working in the Tarai region, which is the South Plains, we have realized that catching dogs is a lot more tricky. Very tricky, because of the constant conflict, between the humans and the dogs. There's groups of dogs that are threatening the locals, so the locals retaliate. So the dogs don't like them. Locals don't like the dogs, and because there are too many of them, there's always a conflict, and this makes our job difficult. Because what happens is every time when we go for a dog catching, the dogs are traumatized by the past experiences. So it's very difficult to catch them. And then we have to, run through the rice fields with the net in the hand. And so often we have had, our members come with half mud, soaked up to knee, muds and water and whatnot. So while working with the municipalities, there's a lot of the differences in there, but because they don't have those facilities, they have been kind enough to reach out to us. So we provide technical support. Organizations that are already in the field of dog neutering, who have done it, who have experienced it, we can share it with the municipalities who are willing to do it and encourage them to do the same and teach them, this is how you can do it, how to catch the dogs, how to handle the dogs, what are the equipments that we need. And I think this is where the organizations, and even most importantly, the grassroots organizations play a very important role, because they're very easy to connect with the municipalities. Another important thing about grassroots organization is, and I think it's why important, is we understand the context. We've seen it all. We have been there. We understand how people think. We understand how the people in the government think. So we can actually be that bridge between the locals and the government, and even help, laying out the different solutions to this problem. And because we have seen it so often, and I know Lynn keeps telling about the stories I tell. And I think these are the stories. That is why we understand the concept. You see, if there is a reaction, what has caused that reaction? And we can, when it comes from a neutral person, like organization, people take it a little more seriously, So the same thing, maybe sometimes people might not believe when they hear it from people they know, but when people like organizations working from them and we tell them the exact same thing, I don't know, it just becomes a lot more authentic for people. And, that helps the situation a lot. So this is why the working with the municipalities has, become such an important part. And while we talk about the apps, we also have a dog data app that Heart uses to keep track of the vaccinations. So you can also see it on the dogdata.uk, because we also very strongly believe that keeping records and a track of the progress is super important. So if you have a chance, you can go through the website as well. So, yeah.
Yeah, I think that's a really good point about the how, small local based organizations are, you're there for the long term. You're not just coming in to do a project and moving to a different country to do a different project. So it's a lot, it puts you in a really strong position for building trust with government officials and with community members in a way that I think an organization based in another country would struggle to do, or it's just more, it can be more challenging. Oh, one thing I wanted to add about the program in Kathmandu that we were talking about is it's going really well now, but it had some stumbling in the beginning. I'll say, especially the municipality started out just working with whatever organization or vet clinic was bidding the lowest price, like they were doing building an office building or something like that, like just a tender process. And so there were some vet clinics that were offering to sterilize for the lowest price per dog, and then there were a lot of infections and dehiscence and just worrying surgeries. And so the Cat Center and other organizations were able to talk with the municipality and say, look, you can't just look at the numbers, you also have to look at the welfare of the dogs and see these dogs being returned to the neighborhoods and what happens to them next. And so now there's been a shift towards focusing on fewer partners and looking at the quality of the surgery and the experience of the organizations, and not just the financial bottom line.
I think that's a great point to be noted regarding the quality of the work and how it should be done. One of the issues that we had while working, taking initially another organization had done the neutering work. Unfortunately, they did not have any identification marks on the dogs to identify that they were neutered. And this is why the communication between the organizations and the way, how we express, how we can relay the information about the work is very important. Now, normally, the dogs here that are neutered are identified with a small notch on the left ear. These dogs did not have those notches. So it got very tricky for us to work. And unfortunately, we found around 10, 11 dogs that had to undergo anesthesia, and we discovered later on that they were already neutered. So even when there are different organizations working, sticking to one plan, to a common plan, there should be certain things that are common to everybody should follow it. The instructions, the protocols is very important, so that wherever there is an exchange or there is an handover, it does not affect, and the dogs and the cats should not fall victim to those kind of irresponsibilities. So this is one issue that we had. So the fact that the Metropolitan now is trying to bring it all together under one protocol will help eliminate issues as such.
I think as we talked to each other before, we always mentioned that it's important to get the local community to trust us more. Maybe Liliana can share some story about it.
Yes. So as I mentioned before, we actually have like a group of animal lovers here in Pokhara. We call it Pokhara Animal Lovers Group. And one of the things that AfA did was we used to get a lot of rescue calls. And, we have sometimes when we are in surgery, for example, we are not able to attend the rescues immediately. And sometimes that can take a few hours. So what we did was we actually organized a meet and greet program to bring together all the animals, especially the dog lovers here in Pokhara. So we did a very small event, and the impact of that event was very visible because we had, many people from maybe a kilometer away, and they did not know that, that there was a fellow dog lover who is just like few blocks away from there. And later on, when issues like rescues were there, then they actually collaborated themselves, they communicated, and then brought the dog to us. So 2 is better than 1, right? And these are the stories that we have. So bringing together local feeders is something that we did, and it has actually helped reduce the rescue times because now they can all get together and bring. We also had a bit of an issue with feeders at times because there is an emotional standpoint to the work we do, but there is also a technical and a practical standpoint to the work we do. A rescue is not the unicorns and rainbows, and I think all of us can, attest to that. So sometimes when there are people who are too emotionally attached to the animals, to the dogs and cats, and explaining to them what is the situation, explaining to them a technical point of the view, a technical view for that particular situation is difficult at times. And it requires a lot of talking.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah. And Liliana, maybe you can share some of the story with us. As I know, you have a lot of experience in psychology, so maybe you know how to bring the community together and know how to get them to trust us more.
Yeah, I'm gonna tell you what I learned when I arrived to CAD, which is like very recent. And they have been working in the area for quite so many years now, right?
20.
Around 20 years. And so the community in which they work has become more aware of the dogs. They understand a lot better the dynamics of these dogs, the ones that are community dogs, the ones that are owned, the ones that are just roaming dogs, stray dogs that do not belong to the community. And they understand that CAD is there to help them in case there is an emergency with any of own dogs or community dogs, or even if they see a stray dog that is in bad shape or that has had a road traffic accident, for example, and the community is able to communicate with us and bring the animal or call it to our emergency line and say, hey, we have a problem. So what I'm seeing is that the relationship with the community is the base of everything. I mean, I know that the municipalities are very important, and the high level stakeholders are important because they are the ones that provide us with the tools and maybe the money to sterilize. But it doesn't stop with the sterilization, because there's the animal welfare and the animal love that needs to go with it, and that needs to go hand in hand, because otherwise you can have dog owners that do not care about the dogs. There's just like a doorbell for their houses, and they're chained. So if we don't if we don't communicate with the community, and if we don't provide them with the tools to understand how the animals react to certain aspects to our behaviors towards them, it's going to create differences in between the behavior of us towards them and the animals towards us. So having a good relationship with the community is very, very important. We always talk about education and school education, but it has to go beyond that. It's not just the school students and teenagers. Yes, they are the base and they will be the future, and they will need to understand, and things are changing, but the animals belong to the community or belong to a family, and the families, is not the children who is going to rule that, is the adult. So we need to reach out to these adults, and maybe they are animal lovers, maybe they are animal haters, for example. So what I tried to do in Romania, but in the end it didn't work, because you also need to understand the context and the culture of where you are. So it's a humane community development, which is provided. It's one of the tools provided by ICAM, and it's a step-by-step process, for the communities in need of a humane, sustainable solution for their dog problems. So what it's a participatory approach that enables the community, any ordinary people, to play like an influential role in the decision making of what's happening in our community. So how do we manage the dogs that are in our community, the community dogs? And that is going to make them understand one another, in humans, and understand the dynamics of the dogs, and then come up with common solutions for all of them, for the welfare of the animals and the well-being of the humans, because everything is interchanged and interrelated. So again, communities are very important, and it's just not with schools that we're going to achieve that.
Yeah, I think that's a great point.
Yes.
Sorry, I
On
wanted
the brighter,
to
yes,
add.
I think on the brighter side, if I had to add a little to Liliana's, I think the change is there. If we see there's younger people who are a lot more compassionate to their pet animals, beginning from pet animals, and we can see that change. And I personally believe that we are in a transition phase, a phase where my parents have a very different perspective of dogs and cats than I do. So sometimes my dog sleeping in a bed sounds obnoxious to my parent, but I love them so much and I don't mind them on the bed. So I really do believe that we are in that transition phase where we are accepting the fact that pets are not pets, they're our family members. And with the kind of education that Liliana has just talked, I think we can speed up that process a little more.
Thank you.
Yeah, well, it makes me feel old to say this, but I've been coming to Nepal for more than 20 years, and the change I've seen has been amazing. When I first came here, just a really big percentage of the dogs were street dogs. Maybe somebody threw some old food to them, but there wasn't a lot of care given to the dogs. There's very little awareness about rabies. I think a lot of people saw dogs as sort of like pigeons in a city street. Like, well, they're there, but you just ignore them. And yeah, it's amazing now. I feel like, anybody under the age of maybe 25 or so, if you say you were bitten by a dog, they'll immediately say, oh, did you wash it? Did you go to the hospital? Did you get vaccinated? Like, young people really know, rabies awareness and responsible pet ownership is growing. And yeah, and as Anjani said, I think the animal charities can do a lot to speed up this process and sort of normalize pets as part of the family, or at least members of the community that we can all take care of, rather than just something that lays on the street in front of your house.
We actually have several instances, and during the COVID, we took the opportunity, and as much as we tried to breathe something positive in that time, right? So we started a little sharing information where we said, you don't have to feed all the dogs, just make sure that you feed the dog that is in front of your house. So that way, if all the community members, maybe not all of them will feed the dogs, but those who are interested, if they just feed one dog, I'm pretty sure that is still better than like being none. And this is also wouldn't be wrong to say a tactic, something that we use in our rescues. For example, say there is a dog and that we have been called in for rescue, and it's, for example, a mange dog, so we have to give some medicines to it. And at times we do not have place in our clinic, maybe, or sometimes there might be an outbreak. And, the best way of treatment forward is treating the dog in that community. So what we do is we request the person who has called us for the rescue if they can give the medicines to the dog. Of course, the medicines will provide pro bono, free of cost, but all they have to do is feed the dog the medicine. And we have seen it happen more than once. The people, they give they have like a little rice or a chapati or even meat sometimes a little bit, because you need to feed the dog. And once that becomes a little bit of a habit, you give it 1 day, you give it 2 days, it just becomes a habit for people. And when they see visible improvement in the dog, that the dog is getting better and they made it happen, they just, it, I think, brings a kind of, they're so proud that they could have done something, they've done something, and it becomes a habit. Now you have a dog that you have to feed because the dog is going to be at your gate. And we've actually seen this relationship blossom from there. So now, technically, the dog might not be inside the house, because any person who loves a dog probably has a dog at home, but then they have someone to take care of. And if the dog is sick, they know where to call, and they can find a way to bring the dog here, and we can help with treatment. And that is one of the ways that we are trying to improve, or get the community more engaged with the dogs around them, and as you said, and not just think that they're just something on the street, but someone that deserves a bit of love and respect.
Yeah, I think that Gregg and Lily and I also have many experience with this, because you two have been like travel to many countries and work in different countries. Can you please share some experience or campaigns that you like organized before to like bring the community to like care for their animals and promote adoption? Because I know like Cat has dog projects as well.
Yeah, I can say something sort of. Oh, go
No,
ahead.
please.
Okay, I'll say that building on what Liliana said a little bit earlier with people talk about well, most of us in this field are animal people. We got into this because we love animals, we want to help animals, so the obvious thing to do is sort of directly helping animals, whether it's campaigns or rescue or whatever it is. And and then I feel like in the evolution of a lot of animal charities, the education sort of comes after that, and you realize, oh yeah, we're supposed to do education. That's what they said at that conference I went to. So you hire an education person and they go to schools, and that's a good step forward. But I think I would encourage people to not just think about education as a separate program on the side, but really integrate it into all the programs as much as you can. Every time you rescue an animal, every time you put an animal back in its neighborhood, every time somebody brings an animal to you, those are all opportunities to change how people think, produce human behavior change. And so I feel like when an organization just sees education as like, oh yeah, we go to X number of schools per year, it's a lost opportunity to really get the community to work with you in the long term. And then from the community, the government follows as well. If more and more constituents and voters care about animals, then that's going to change policy indirectly. And so I think that's really a key part of the whole work that we do.
Mm-hmm. You wanted to say something, Anjani?
No, please, after you.
Okay. So we always talk about sterilization, and now we're talking about community engagement, and we're talking about education. Another way to know your community, if you have not had the chance to, if let's say you're new, as an organization, or you want to go a little more in depth that just your surroundings, is to do one part of like the dog population management, which is the household questionnaires, in which you can go to, if your population is small, you can go to each of the households that you have, but if not, you do a sample of them, and you do a series of questions that you can also use an app for that. We use the Kobo toolbox, and it's very, very efficient, and afterwards we can get the all the results at once in the screen, as well as the map. So that is very helpful. But in a standardized way, you ask questions about own dogs, about roaming dogs, and about the perception of the community animals and roaming animals for that household in particular. And you also tell them that there's an organization that is behind that, and that if in case of any emergency, trouble, etc., and this organization is there to help. And with this household questionnaires, you can in the ICAM tools, you can see that there's a whole set of questions that you can answer. You can ask, but of course you need to customize it, based on your needs. And that will bring you insights of, the community itself, but the problems and the problems or the goods that that happen within the welfare and the treatment of the cats and dogs. We're talking always about dogs, but they're also cats. In the program that I ran in Romania, we also included working animals. We included donkeys and horses. And all these questions that we asked about donkeys and horses, they were for our program of donkeys and horse outreach. So we're talking about different topics, and outreach and engagement is different. But throughout these household questionnaires, we could have a global idea of the animals that were in the community and how to better approach the people that took care of these animals, and make a strategy and make a plan in order to provide a better help for these animals and for the community.
Yeah, I just want to add about the importance of doing these household surveys. Last year I consulted on a project in Saudi Arabia to create the country's first dog population management program. And part of our work there, I was with a team, and part of the work included doing these door-to-door surveys, and Ellie Hebe coordinated it. And a lot of people thought, okay, it's the Middle East, it's a Muslim country, so nobody likes dogs. Even some of the Saudi people that we talked to were saying, like, why are you bothering doing a survey? People don't like dogs. And but actually we were really surprised that a lot of people there put out waste food for the dogs. They'll put their their most of their garbage in the bin, and then they'll put the food on the ground for dogs to eat. And this really changed the whole plan for how to manage the dog population, because if dogs are coming into town at sunrise to get food every day from people, that's a very different situation than if the dogs are really feral. So yeah, I think these surveys can be helpful for shaking up some of the assumptions that we make, and giving some insights about the communities you work with, even if you've been working in the same place for decades.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and it's also a tool to measure the impact that you're doing, because you can ask about dog bites, you can ask about you can see the animals, you can see the body condition score and do some measurements. And if you're thorough enough, and if you're really disciplined, you can do that in different stages. And you will see if the message went through, you can see the changes in these animals. Like in Romania, for example, the dogs are usually chained. So the ones that are the community dogs are roaming dogs, but the ones that are own dogs, they are not really taken as part of the family. They think that they really take care of them, but because it has food and water and maybe a little roof, but really there's no understanding of the needs of the dogs and also the cats. But these dogs might be chained just to be a doorbell. They might change just to be just to be there, for the family, for the kids. And if you do the household questionnaires, the door-to-door questionnaires, and you see that dog has a chain that is, really short, you can talk to the owner, and you can if you can see that the owner can provide a longer chain, you can tell them. Or if you see that is a social case, maybe you can help and provide yourself that chain. And talking with the people and doing this household questionnaires, we saw that the thinking of the population changed over time towards the better welfare of these animals. I mean, you don't need to be so what I'm trying to say is that you need to be in their shoes. You need to understand why they're doing that. I mean, sometimes it's out of because they don't know better. So that's what they do. And if you show them that there's a better way and they really care about their animals, there's a possibility that they might change their attitudes towards that. So that will increase the welfare of the animals. And at the same time, if the animals are better, the humans will also be better and be safer, out of, if we're talking about diseases, and if we're talking about other things and dog bites, etc., because there will be a better relationship between animals and humans.
Yes,
So
yes, I agree. I think it's good that we spend time to learn more about our community that we need to interact with, and I think it's also like important to work with the local government. And I think that so many grassroots NGOs we are sometimes like confused about how to work with the government. So maybe Anjani can share with us a story about that, because I know that the doctors used to happen there.
I just saw a question on the messages. So this where there's been a question about how we address the issues in rural parts. So I would like to give a small example on that. So as Heart is in Pokhara and Chitwan in two bases. Now, when we say Pokhara, I think a lot of people might imagine a very fancy part, probably Lakeside. Lakeside is a part of it. But apart from Lakeside, now the Greater Pokhara actually has a lot of hills around it. So all of that is Pokhara. Now, as much as Pokhara is a city in itself, the hills are not. These are very simple agriculture-based communities. And one of the biggest issues in the hills that we have realized is monkeys. There are just too many monkeys in the hills, surrounding Pokhara. So a few years back, we actually did a vaccination camp when Pokhara became a Greater Pokhara, when Pokhara and Leknath merged along with other small villages. So we did a vaccination camp all over it. It took us 3 months to complete the vaccination camp in all these areas. So we went to every ward office. We talked to the local authorities. We told them what our program was, that we also would like to, provide vaccination and see what is the condition of the dogs there. And while in doing that, we realized that a lot of people actually have dogs because there are just too many monkeys, and they love the dogs. It's not that I believe that Nepal is a country where dogs are loved. We have a day we worship dogs, but because of the monkey issues, a lot of in the sub areas, people have 3 dogs, 4 dogs, so many dogs. But the problem in these areas is that there aren't enough veterinary services. So even though people might have 4 dogs, it's expensive to get them vaccinated. For example, in the hills, when there's a veterinarian who has to travel there, might charge around 800 rupees or 500 rupees minimum for one vaccine. So if you have 4 dogs, that's 2,000 rupees. And sometimes farmers may not have that much money or are not willing to spend that much money on something like vaccinations. For an animal, for a dog, which in the very general sense does not have any financial benefit to the farmers. Indirectly, of course, it is protecting the crops. But for example, if you had a cattle, the farmers have a very different perspective. So we actually, when we did that, we did the exact same thing that Liliana said. We asked them, what do you feed the dog? How do you keep the dog? So in the main areas of Pokhara, while the most issue is that dogs are tied too much, in the suburban and in the hills, the issue is that the dogs are too free. Nobody knows who the dog belongs to until it was the vaccination camp and everybody came with their dogs to get them vaccinated, and they didn't have chains. Like very few of them had chains, right? So they had like very funny looking ropes, or some of them had their dupattas on them, on the dogs, because they never tie the dogs. So they never needed anything like a chain to tie them. The dogs is free to go around, make a mess, chase the monkeys, and then comes back in the evening and eats and then sleeps. So there's a very different scenario when you see a Pokhara Valley and when you see the suburban. So in the suburban and the rural areas, that is how we are helping. Are rescues possible in this? Unfortunately not. A lot of times when we receive from calls from, high up on the top on the hills, we request them if they can bring the dog over. And surprisingly, actually, many people do. We have had dogs who have been brought in from Kanruk, which is like few hours away from Pokhara. So from Dampus, from Lachok, people made the effort to reserve a taxi, send the dog in to us for treatment. So that is how, we are helping. And I think it is important for people to know, the community to know that if we make an effort, there is a place we can reach out to. So as long as we have that place, and it's all about meeting halfway, we do this and the community does this. And that is how we can work together as a grassroots organization. So that is how we have been doing the work in the suburban. So recently we actually did a free health camp in Begnas, in Lake Nath area, with the help from two wonderful dog lovers from there. And we did one camp in the market area, very fancy dogs sometimes. I really believe the Japanese species should be declared the national dog here, because every dog is a Japanese species or crossbreed. But when we went uphill, when we had another camp on the upper areas, we saw a massive problem of ticks over there. And we actually had to, bring a dog here and prescribe medicines for a few because of ticks, because they are very endemic. And now these are the places that do not have veterinary services easily accessible. So whenever, a couple of people, the locals, can make an effort and we can join their effort in hand, it gives great results. Together of more than 100 animals, dogs and cats were helped in that camp. And I think that's a great story. Two people started a campaign and we were all able to join in, and more than 100 animals received, went through the program. So I think that's one very small example of, bringing the community together and doing all our parts.
Yes, I think that's so awesome. And I think maybe Gregg and Liliana can share the story about Kathmandu city as well. I remember that you mentioned to me before that the government agreed to give funding to 9 small organizations. So do you face any challenges in that, and how do you overcome that?
Yeah, well, we I think we touched on that or sort of around the beginning of the conversation, and I don't know, is there more to say about it?
Maybe you can say it again.
Yeah, so I'll just reiterate. It's so the Kathmandu municipality is collaborating with 9 local small NGOs and clinics to run a sterilization program throughout the city. And so it's a large working area with some tens of thousands of dogs. And so it's, it didn't there were some challenges in the beginning, I'll say, but it's running well now. And I think with the clout of the municipality, that helps to coordinate people. They're providing the funding, they're obviously extremely influential. And so that helps to, how animal charities are. There's some friction between some of them, or some, different methods and disagreements, but I think the municipality is able to bring everyone together and align us on methods and, dog survey techniques as well. So it's going well so far. I mean, there's still a long way to go. And I think once the fact that their data have not been collected in a systematic way is definitely a shortcoming. And my gut feeling is that once we do get some data out of this, we're going to find that it needs to become more systematic. My suspicion is that a lot of organizations involved in this have just been collecting, a few dogs here, a few dogs there, and maybe they're covering 20, 30, 40% of the population in their working area, but not getting to that 70 or 80%. And so I hope I'm wrong, but I'm expecting that we'll see that. And that way, we'll be able to make some data-driven decisions about maybe refocusing, and instead of covering the whole city all at once, focusing on specific wards and really saturating them with the sterilization program.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I saw a question that's farmers and asked that how they wondering how they can rescue animals in the remote place, and it would be great if you two can share your experience on this.
Yeah, actually, I saw the question, so I answered it about the rural areas one. I'm not sure how it is in Kathmandu, though.
It's tough. There are still a lot of gaps in the coverage of animal charities or even basic veterinary services. You know, it's not like the UK, for example, where I feel like every village has an animal shelter. There's still huge areas where it's, you know, there aren't even any doctors for humans, never mind veterinarians or anybody who has, you know, skills or experience to help animals in a systematic way. So it's hard. I don't have any great answers for that other than the fact that I think we need to, the animal protection sector still has a long way to go to expand and cover more areas. I mean, I think it's fantastic that HEART is working in areas where no other animal charities are working. I think that's a really important step forward for the movement, and we need more of that.
Thank you. Okay.
So, no,
Are there any questions? I think we are in our question session.
so yes, I think we have a question that's would you like to see more partnership between like international organization and grassroots NGO working towards similar goals, and do such partnership exist at the moment, and how would that work best in the context of Nepal? Could you hear me?
I did not quite get the question.
I think the question is, would you like to see more partnership between a big organization, international organization, and local organization working in the similar goals, and do such partnership exist at the moment, and how would it work in the best context of Nepal?
Okay. Okay, I would like to answer that. I think our first priority has always been in working with the local authorities and the government. As much as working with big organizations is great, as we have talked earlier, you know, people who are here understand the situation, the problem, and have better solutions to it. And they are here, simple as that. And also, we have to understand that the local authorities and the government have a responsibility towards the management of the street animals, whether they like it or not. The only issue most of the time is that amidst the so many issues that are there, they are pushed really, really down. So as people who as dog lovers, as animal enthusiasts, as grassroots organization, I think one of the things that we have to do is join our hands together to make sure that our issues are addressed. Is it difficult? Yes. And I think, like in our past, a lot of discussions, we have talked about how difficult it is to get things done on a government, a platform through the government. It is difficult, but it is also sustainable. There are actually, the municipalities have an allotted budget for the management of dog population, certain, maybe a little less, maybe a little more, but there are, government budget that is allocated for this. And we as organizations, or we as people who are aware about these information, we should take onto that hand that we make them, there is this, let's do this. Because if we do not tell them, there is a possibility that it might just go away. So, and one of the, how the budgeting here works is, if the budget is not spent within this fiscal year, there is a good possibility that the budget might not come in the following year. And that way, the animal issues will remain just underdressed for a really long time, until there is a rabies outbreak, and then everybody is wondering, oh, what should we do? So that is why I think working with the government, or asking the government and the local authorities to share in their responsibilities should be our topmost priority. And where there are gaps is where I believe other organizations can all chip in, because as I've mentioned earlier, we there is so much we can do in terms of technicalities, in terms of recording, in terms of resources. And the big organizations that have been doing this for decades, they can help us guide through this. So if we can create that a scenario, an intersection part where the government takes responsibility. If they don't, we chip in our help. When the government does a program, they would like to know where the dogs are. And let me tell you, it is always the local feeders who will know where the dogs are, which is an angry dog, which is a happy dog, which is a dog that does not like being touched on the back. And local feeders coming together, the organizations coming together, the government coming together, and binding them all with information that is needed to get the work done, the big organizations. And I think that is the intersection that we should be heading for. So I do not see why that cannot happen. I believe it can. But again, of course, there's a lot of technicalities over there. But really, if we all can bring together the working mechanism of grassroots, feeders, government, and the big organizations, it would be a fantastic intersection and probably an ideal intersection part.
Yeah. I've had a lot of success working with the big global organizations. I mean, where it makes sense. Sometimes it doesn't make sense, and it would be one-sided, or there would be stepping on each other's toes. But one thing that comes to mind is disaster response, where in 2015, when the earthquakes happened in Kathmandu, I was actually working at Soy Dog Foundation in Thailand, but I came over here and worked with, coordinating with AfA, HSI, World Animal Protection, other organizations. And it worked really well. Combined, as Anjani mentioned, this the local expertise of the local charities, combined with the resources of the international organizations, we really filled gaps that we couldn't have done without each other. So I think that went really well. And also, Liliana and I are still helping a lot of animals in Ukraine, and a lot of the support for that has come from global organizations that were able just have much more robust fundraising mechanisms than small animal charities do. And so they've been able to raise a lot of funds and pass those funds on to us. And we know specific animal shelters and vet clinics and volunteers in Ukraine that are doing essential work, and we can it all comes together really well with disaster response in the best cases. And I mean, the big charities, obviously they have a lot of resources, expertise and funding. And so I think capacity building is another way that could be helpful. Like, Anjani had mentioned going out into areas where the dogs are harder to catch. And the first thing I thought of is, oh, well, there are big charities that have a lot of experience with blowpipes, traps. And so, sort of a collaboration for building capacity of the staff to learn more methods of catching dogs is, I think that would be a good case for this kind of collaboration between an international charity and a local one. So I think it can be really beneficial. I would just avoid creating kind of a dependency, because typically the local charities will be here for a long time, and you don't want to become overly dependent on an organization based in some other country where, somebody based in London or DC might decide that their new strategic plan doesn't include your country anymore. And if you become overly dependent on any one source of support, really, whether it's an individual donor or an organization, that can put you in a weak footing.
So we have another question. I see in the comment that what advice would you give to other organizations or individuals looking to engage in lobbying or advocacy work with their government on animal welfare matters? Liliana, maybe you want to answer this question?
Sorry, where's the question?
So this is current question. This one. I guess I can step in and say a few words. I say definitely joining together with other organizations will give you a lot more strength. If you're just one small animal charity, will the government listen to you? Maybe, maybe not. I mean, but if you can form a coalition of all the major animal charities in the area or in the country, or even most of them, that gives you a much stronger voice, and you can say you represent a lot more voters and a bigger set of population. And I know, yeah, it can be hard to get everyone to get along sometimes, but it's important for lobbying the government to get beyond that. Even if you don't agree about everything, if you can agree about passing an animal welfare law or just some broad policy level goals like that, I think that's really important. We also had, just from my experience, some things that have worked well with working with government officials, and I'm sure a lot of this is things I'm sure a lot of people in the audience have already know about, but just really trying to understand their priorities and their needs is important. I mean, and try to bring value to them. Like, do they care about rabies? Do they care about public health? Maybe they don't care about animals, but they get complaints about poop in the streets, and so maybe you can use that angle. But figure out what their priorities are and find some common ground to work with them. And yeah, and with government, I mean, spend a lot of time building trust and building relationships with them. Go to meetings, even if it seems pointless. Just the more time you spend with them, the more that they can see you as a valuable potential partner and a source of expertise, rather than just some animal charity that's always complaining about that they're not doing what they're supposed to do. And even if they're terrible people, generally I would treat them with respect. I mean, I've found there are times when an aggressive campaign against the government is appropriate, but from my experience, most of the time working with government officials gets you a lot further than working against them. So years ago with an animal charity that I worked with, we collaborated a lot with, we don't say collaborate, but we communicated a lot with the head of the public health department, who had a reputation for taking bribes to approve slaughterhouses. It was sort of there was pretty widespread corruption. And of course, I mean, we never told anybody that he's a great guy, but we worked with him because he was one of the most influential people for dog population management, even though he was involved in a lot of corruption and shady dealings. And so we treated him with respect. And again, the last thing I would say is just hope that these people you're building relationships with don't, there's not an election and then they lose their position and they're replaced by somebody else, and then you have to start from zero, because that happens a lot and that can be really frustrating. So there's some scattered ideas about lobbying and trying to, politely put pressure on government officials.
Yeah.
Sure.
Another thing that I would add to Gregg's comments is that if you can prove to the municipalities and to the government and to the big stakeholders that the work that you are doing is making a difference, it's making an impact, and it's measurable, and you can prove it, they will start looking you in a different way. They will start believing more in you, and they will be more interested in what they can achieve with your collaboration and expand it to other organizations maybe. And this is what happened actually with the KMC, the Kathmandu work that we are doing now. They chose us, they chose Kat to be like the spokesperson for all the other grassroots organizations that are in the ABC program, because we've been here for a long time and we have been actually doing a really good work. And not just with the ABC program, that they rely on us and they know that we provide good services and that our vets are really skilled, and the animals do not have problems afterwards, but that we also work with the community. And an example that I just recently learned about CAT is that many years ago there was a culling policy, so killing of the animals, and they would kill like around 10,000 animals per year in Kathmandu, because there were like many animals. But thanks to CAT and the relationship that they had with the community, they proved that in the community, they didn't have that many problems. So they talked with the municipality, and they managed to prevent the culling of animals in their municipality. So that is an example of good relationship between the municipality and the organization in which you work, that proves that your work is valuable, and your work is not just helping animals, it's also helping people. Because just because the community, and I just insist on the community because it's like my part, because they're not wild animals, they're domestic animals, so they depend on us. And the kinder and the more compassionate that we are towards animals, the better for the well-being of them and our the welfare of them and our well-being. And I know it sounds a little utopic, but it creates a better environment and a better world, and animals live happier, and also humans live happier. So it's not a la land, but it's a reality based on the work that you do with the community that needs your help, because you are the expert, and you provide tools and you provide care that, as you said, Anji, that some people cannot afford it. And luckily they have you where you are, and here in this section of this area, they have CAT that can help them with their problems. Unfortunately, we cannot reach to far away places, but as you said, Anji, there are people who would drive 3 hours to get an animal sick to you. So hopefully this can also start happening with other grassroots organizations, and have a humane, treatment towards animals.
Yeah, thank you so much for the sharing. I think we are wrapping this up, so we can hear like one last question. So someone asked that if they see a problem in their areas and there's no organization addressing the issues, they might want to start something themselves. Where would they begin with? Do you have any advice for them?
Okay, so when it comes to the context here in Nepal, so even though there might be no organizations in any given municipality, we have to I think people should know that there is actually a government veterinary that is there all the time, first of all. And the second is that all the municipalities now actually have a separate animal department that is dedicated to the management of the animals. So there's two things that is going to be there. There might be no organizations, but there are government bodies that are responsible for the management of these animals. And I think, whatever we talk about, it all boils down that we should be aware about what are the facilities that are available within the municipalities, what is the municipality supposed to do, what is the organization supposed to do. If we do not have a proper idea about the responsibilities and the facilities, we cannot function well. We cannot arrange for the things to happen, right? So the first thing would be to identify the stakeholders, like who is there. If not an organization, there must be something, and the government has it. The municipality has an animal department, and there's going to be a veterinary department. We are an agricultural country. Sometimes when people say, oh, there's no vet, I don't know any vet over here or technician. So the thing that we tell them is, if you can find a person who has a buffalo in their house, I assure you they will have a number for a vet tech, or someone with goats, someone with any kind of animal in their house. Because when the need arises, this is when people want the information, and sometimes they're not easily available. Unfortunately, we are not very good with information, whether it's phone number or contacts. So there's a working, and we understand this because we have been in the field. So if there's a buffalo in somebody's house, they'll probably need a technician to help with the management. So they will have a tech who can help with the dogs or a cat that needs the rescuing with treatment. And this is how I think we can all bring together. So if they want to start an organization, as social media is a great way. We see so many posts on Facebook, and we can just say, oh, and I'm from so and so. Is there anybody else? Or we would just have like a cup of tea and we'll talk about things. And we underestimate the conversation that happens at a cup of tea. So I think that is where we can all start from, a cup of tea.
I like that. I want to add, when people ask me about starting an organization, I always encourage them, start with a strategic plan. I know it's not the most exciting thing to do, but you really get together a group of like-minded people and go through a whole planning process and make a mission statement, make your values and your vision statement and your organizational goals, and really think about where you want to be some years into the future. Because if you don't start with a strategy, maybe things will go fine and you'll do great, or maybe you'll end up with 50 dogs living at your house and no money and no way to take care of them. And you realize, oh, I shouldn't have accidentally started a shelter. I should have started with a sterilization program or an advocacy program or an awareness program. So yeah, that's what I would say. You really start with a plan and get some, like-minded people who can give really good advice to work with you on it.
Juliana, do you have anything to add to this question?
No, I think, in between Anji and Gregg, they really wrapped it up. And I really love the tea strategic planning. So
yes, I agree. It was to start with a cup of tea or coffee, maybe iced coffee, iced tea, because I'm sure that it's hot over there, just like that in my place in Vietnam.
Yeah.
So we have like a few minutes left before I hand over this to the next person. So do you have any last question or the last thing that you want to share with the audience? Anyone? Anything you want to share?
I feel like we've talked a lot today.
Yes, yeah, I agree. I agree.
There's one.
Yeah.
If we do, so do we have a couple more minutes?
Yeah, we do.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thing that I wanted to ask Anjani about, which is I know this came up in one of the DACC meetings as well. Just these some of the people, they're passionate animal lovers, and some of them feed animals on the streets, and they can be a great resource, and they can also be a real headache. And some of them have so much enthusiasm that sometimes they get a little irrational. So I was wondering if you have any advice about, from your experience, about how to help these really passionate animal lovers to be good partners and be productive and not kind of run in the wrong direction.
I think it is good communication and a lot of patience, in all honesty. During the COVID time, and this is what we realized, there were a lot of young people feeding, right? But then even feeding came with its own share of issues for the locals, because we actually had an incident where the feeders picked up a fight with the locals, because the locals said that, oh, you're feeding the dogs and you're making the place dirty. And the feeders were like, why not? We're like, we have to feed them. Like, they're hungry. There's no one around. And both of them were right in their own places. They were not wrong, all wrong. So when we were presented with something like this, so we said, okay, how about you feed in plates and then you take the plates with you and then you clean the plates. So that way, there's no, there's nothing that's going to waste. The dogs are getting food in a proper place as well. We have had sometimes issues with feeders. I remember this one camp where there was, TVT was is still a massive issue. And there were certain cases where we would not have been able to save the animal. And this is a very tricky part of our satellite neutering camps is what do we do when we come across an animal that we may not be able to help in a long term, the animals that need treatment forever. And we are always presented with this a very difficult situation where we go on camps for the sterilization, but then we are presented with rescues. We see dogs that are very, very sick. And in one of those, we had a really bad case of TBT. And I'm sorry, it sounds a bit graphic, but the TBT had got so bad that it was like this really big mass that was hanging down from this female dog, and it was infected to the point that it had maggots in it. So we could not save the animal. There was no way we could have done anything to her. We didn't have the resources for it, the time for it. And unfortunately, we had to, let her go on humane grounds. When the feeders saw this, they hid every other dog with TBT from us. So every time our van was there, they would hide the dogs that were sick because they thought, oh, they're killing the dogs. So we actually had to get hold of the group person, we sat them down, we told them this is the situation, this is how sick the dog was, this is a very contagious disease, this is, it can get to other dogs, and while we are trying to save one, this can, affect dozens dogs, and all of them are going to turn sick. So we sat them down, we had a two-way conversation, we listened to them, we listened their level, what was their understanding. We tried to, decode their way of understanding things, and then we put our perspective in place. So it really comes down to good communication and a lot of patience. And you're absolutely right, Gregg. We cannot be angry at all times. Anger, if anything, it just ruins things. So we sat down, we had the conversation. So we came to a conclusion that, okay, so these are the dogs that have this problem, where this is the treatment that we can do, and this is the treatment that you will have to continue in the future. Are you willing to do it? Is there a possibility that you can help with it? If so, this is what we can do next. Maybe we can take help from the government people. Maybe you can consult a private technician for it, and that is how we talked with the feeders. And we were able to come to a solution regarding this, huge TBT problem. And we were able to clear our tags as someone who killed the dog. So this is what happened. And even here in Pokhara, now that there are, the feeders and community caretakers, we have developed this amazing relationship where they have, every time they see a female dog, they'll be like, there is a new female dog that we spotted. So we assess, is she ready for neutering? Is there anything else she needs? Does she need any help? So if she's too young, okay, maybe we wait for some time. And because the feeders keep feeding her, she's not going anywhere. She's there. And when the time is right, we bring her over, we neuter her, we spay her. And that way, the locals are also not angry at the feeder, because this is what we have to understand, that the feeders also have issues they face, that people are not, everybody is going to be happy. So listening to them, understanding to them, and then working accordingly and sharing our share of the knowledge is always useful. I think that is the only way it can work, listening to one another.
Yeah, thank you so much for sharing the experience with us. And I think we run over time, and it's really nice to hear everyone here to join us. And it's good that Red Cat finally joins us for the very last minute. So thank you so much again for joining the discussion today. And I'm handing over this to Brooke.
Thanks so much. This is really, really lovely.
Thank you.
To join you. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you so
Hi
much.
there. Thank you so much, all of you. Anjani, Gregg, Liliana, Lynn, and Kat. We're all very excited to see the cat. Just a few closing notes before we go ahead and have a break. So first, I want to announce that we have a few upcoming Connect sessions for 2024. As I mentioned at the beginning, this was the first of our Connect sessions. We have sorry, the slide is, can we go back to the previous slide? Yeah, okay, so in June, we have insurmountable challenges, aiming for solutions. In August, the power of community, sharing skills, experiences, and resources. And in November, Communication Matters, a united movement. And we recommend that you keep your eye on our social media in order to, register for those as soon as they come up. We've got some really exciting things lined up already. We also have a couple of in-person events scheduled for this year. One of them is Asia Farm Animal Day, which will take place in Hanoi from the 9th to 11th of October. We also have a couple of regional farm animal coalition events scheduled. We don't have precise dates for those yet, but they will be happening in Philippines and India. So again, watch this space for further information about those, how to register. Also, this year, 2024, we have launched the Asia for Animals podcast, and that features a whole variety of different guests. We have podcasts made by our different working groups. We've released 5 or 6 of them already, and they're really, really interesting. They cover everything from, policy to macaque issues, dog and cat issues, farm issues, and more. You can really find those wherever you can find podcasts, but here are some examples of some of the platforms that carry them. And you can always just go to our website and listen directly from there.